Texas, how many more seats do you want the Republicans to draw for House? And then what if California, New York, Illinois, and other blue states decide to do this?
Too, but 5. I think we get 5. And there could be some other states. We're going to get another 3 or 4 or 5 in addition. Texas would be the biggest one, and
so
that'll be 5.
Are you calling then for a complete redrawing of the congressional map ahead of next year?
Just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats. But we have a couple of other states where we'll pick up seats also.
President Trump is all in on a Texas Republican plan to redistrict the state. Now, this usually does not happen at this time. It usually happens once a decade. It has already happened this decade. But President Trump and the Texas Republican governor, Greg Abbott, they see an opportunity. This morning on a call with Texas Republicans, the president said he thinks the redrawing districts at this time could net 5 extra GOP seats, which could be enough to hold the House majority in the midterms. Now, this is according to a source familiar with that call. My panel is back with me, and I have one of my favorite Texans here, Abby Livingston, to help explain this. So there is a special session, and it is largely because of the flood and trying to figure out how to help the victims of the flood and to try to prevent it, that kind of thing, from happening again. As part of that, because they're all there, they thought, oh, we have a big majority, let's try to redraw the lines in order to give Republicans more safe seats.
So my sense was this was going to happen before the flood even happened. Okay. So that was my understanding. I am not the least bit geographically biased as a 7th generation Texan, but if they implement a 5-seat aggressive tact, that is going to make Texas the single most interesting state in the midterms between that and the Senate race. And if I'd heard rumors, it might be 2 seats, it might be 5. 2 seats they could do very simply and go through South Texas, which is trending toward Republicans, and take out 2 incumbents or Democratic-held seats very easily. But this means they've got to go to the suburbs. And Trump has struggled in the Texas suburbs. He did actually pretty well last November in the Texas suburbs, but this could be different, and midterm years are very different in Texas than presidential years. And so the refrain I hear among Democrats that Playbook said out loud the other day was, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And so some of these Texas Republican incumbents are going to have to give up Republican voters to endanger a Democrat. Right. And they're going to have to run for the first time in their careers in a general election, many of them.
Right. So meaning it could hurt some of the incumbent Republicans. The fact if they give away some of their GOP land, so to speak, it could hurt them. And as you're answering that, I just wanted to so our viewers see what the breakdown is as we speak. Republican-held seats in Texas versus Democrats. Go ahead, Abby.
It depends on how far they go. And so it might just mean some Republican members have to raise money for the first time and run in a general election for the first time. But some of them could be embattled if they go far into this. And so I think that, and one other point that I think is key, one of the things that fueled Beto O'Rourke's rise in 2018 was these competitive House seats underneath him. You had campaigning for the first time, advertising in the first time in some of these big cities. Yep. And so John Cornyn, if he wins the nomination, he's a pretty good general election candidate. But there is a lot of party building underneath this Senate race if they go ahead with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating because I actually did a big story on redistricting after the census, which is when all of the state legislatures and all of the states, no matter, depending on who's doing it, looks at their lines and they redistrict. And Texas is a place that we went to look at, and it's an incumbent protection program. So Republicans run things in Texas. They protected their own. But Democrats were also kind of in on it. They were fine with protecting their own and making the blue seats even bluer. Having said that, let's go over to California, because Gavin Newsom is looking at what's happening in Texas. And he said 2 can play at this game. Now, he's responding to Punchbowl, which first reported on what's going on with Texas. And by that, he means if we can put up the congressional delegation from California, there are only 9 Republican-held seats, 43 Democratic-held seats, but many of those Republican-held seats tend to be swingy and kind of hard for Republicans to hold. It is a Democratic governor, a Democratic legislature in California. they could try to do this. It's a little more complicated because there's an independent commission.
Yeah, I mean, this to me screams, a Trump special in terms of Texas. They work harder, work smarter, not harder, right? We don't need to necessarily get all the seats. Let's rejigger this a little bit, and then we don't have to work harder in other places, and we get the seats we want from an area that we believe is safe. Also, let's get this done now, and maybe it'll affect people in the future, but that's not really our problem. Let's get through the midterms and get through the next 2 years after that. The California thing is interesting. I really do think that one of Gavin Newsom's qualities that make him such an interesting character in terms of politics is he has really figured out how to needle the Trump team in a way that no one else on the Democratic side has. Nobody else gets to them and gets the game the way that Newsom does. So this idea, that's something that's going to drive them nuts, because here they are, again, work smarter, not harder. Well, now they're looking at this and saying, well, actually, that could cause some problems for us.
It could. Again, it's a little bit harder in
Right.
California. Gavin Newsom obviously realized pretty early on that he's going to be President Trump's foil, and he said, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in.
With the critical midterm elections set for next year, sources tell CNN that President Trump is telling Republicans in Texas he believes they can flip as many as 5 seats in the Lone Star State as part of a push toward redistricting. CNN political director David Chalian joins us now. David, why are President Trump and his allies so keen on this?
Well, they're so keen on it because Democrats are just 3 seats away from taking the majority in 2026. It's such a narrow House majority. And so what they're looking to do is looking around and saying, what can we do to fortify our majority and make that distance that Democrats need to overtake the majority further away from them? And one way to do that is this pure political power play. Both parties do it, by the way, but they're the ones in charge in Texas to redraw the lines and try to maximize more seats so that therefore it's a tougher goal for the Democrats to overtake the majority.
It's being met with some skepticism, though, in Austin, and they don't seem to think they can get those 5 seats that Trump is looking for.
5 is a lot. You just heard him on the South Lawn when he was leaving to go to Pennsylvania. He was adamant about 5 out of Texas. Then he said there are a couple other states we're looking at. Ohio Republicans are looking at doing something. I think 5 may be a tall order. And you are right. Not every House Republican here in D.C. from Texas is like cheering this, because what happens, Boris, when you redistrict? You look at the map and somebody says, okay, we're going to take some Republicans from this very safe Republican district and we're going to draw them, those voters, into this district that has a Democrat in it right now, make it more Republican friendly. Well, did you just now jeopardize that other incumbent Republican who had a very safe seat is now going to have to fight harder for that district? That's what gives some of these incumbent Republicans pause about how are you going to get net gain 5 seats out of this.
You mentioned a moment ago that both parties do this. Is there anything that Democrats in Texas can do to try to block this?
Nothing really.
No.
This is going back history 20 years ago. Tom DeLay was from Texas. He was the House leadership on the Republican side. He engineered something like this. Texas Democrats fled the state to prevent Texas Republicans from having a quorum to go through with redistricting. That didn't work. They had to give that up, and the numbers were not there for them. You saw Gavin Newsom send out a tweet saying, hey, 2 can play this game. So, the president was asked about this today. What about California? What about New York? Could they, cause you pain? He kind of dismissed that. We'll see if Democrats can find anywhere to sort of counteract this. But Greg Abbott has put this on the agenda for the special session in Texas, and the Republicans are quite serious about trying to pad their numbers.
If anything, it's a tacit admission that they view their odds at keeping both chambers in a midterm election as slim.
Yeah, when you got the presidency, the House, and the Senate, history tells you that the winds are likely going to be against you in that midterm election.
David Chalian, thanks so much.
Sure, yeah.